Hi guys, Micro here. This is my video on the Rex Matriarchs. I'm so sorry for my voice. I've got a very bad throat right now. But I really want to make this video for the Rex Matriarchs on release. So we're just going to have to make do with this voiceover, I guess. These bosses were aimed to be around Gold Wars Dungeon 2 difficulty, and I'd say they've done a decent job at that, and they're not bad. The drops seem a bit worse than Gold Wars Dungeon 2, but only time will tell on that. Depends on what all the ring upgrades and the spear and stuff even out at. I made around a 40 mil budget setup for each of the different styles you're going to take here, and this is the melee one. Obviously, take the best stuff that you have. This is just an example of a cheap setup. The dinosaur is weak to slash, and Ripper Claws are slash weapons, which makes them even better here as it increases the accuracy as it is its weakness. I take full bandos, Blood Amulet of Fury, and your normal PVM stuff. Things like a Super Prayer and All, Holy Overload, Replenishment Potion, Blue Blubber Jellyfish, Luck Ring Swap, Weapon Poison ++. And the only thing in this setup that isn't like a super generic thing for PVM is the Anti-Poison ++. This boss has a poison mechanic that you can counter by having an anti-poison ++ or the Venom Blood perk. It allows you to stand in the poison and negate most of it. And in addition to this, a Slayer Task really helps for that accuracy. These bosses are super tanky, so if you can get a Dinosaur Slayer Task, use your Slayer Helm. Or have a Slayer Helm on the Anachronia stand for the passive. The reason why I'm not wearing a Slayer Helm here is because I've got it on my Anachronia stand. And that is it for the setup. Let's get into the actual method. This week is PVM week, which means you can get the buff of an Elder Overload for an hour at the Elder Overload Golems inside the PVM hub right now. I definitely would recommend that for any PVM you're doing. The reason why I have my Dragon Battle Axe is because it increases your strength for 60 seconds with its special attack. I go over to the Adrenaline Crystal, get 100% Adren, wear the Battle Axe, spec with it. Then I switch back to my Ripper Claw after the spec, get 100% Adren on the Crystal again, and then go into the portal. You can just go through the portal that is the newest boss portal in War's Retreat. If you do want to go directly to them, however, they are found on Anachronia. The boss that's weak to melee is the ranged one to the north of the instance. You don't want to aggro them all at the same time, you want to do them one by one. The mechanics of this one are pretty simple. You DPS it for a little bit, do as much damage as you can in a Zerk rotation. Then when he looks up to the sky and does this animation, it means that you want to move away as there is a ball of like yellow sludge coming down at you. If this hits you directly, it will hit you for like a 6k, so do just step out of it. You want to stand about 4 squares away to where you were. Once it lands, you want to stand inside it with your anti-poison or your Venom Blood perk, taking very small amounts of poison damage and making it get smaller and smaller. Once you've stood in it to the point where it's completely vanished, if the other puddle is accessible and nearby, also stand in that. If it's quite far away, just leave it as it's not worth your time standing in there. You might as well DPS the boss more. After a certain amount of time, he will uber heal with these pools on the floor. Each pool heals him for 30,000 HP. This means that he'll only ever uber heal for 30k max if the second pool was out of reach. You'll always clear the first pool, which will stop him healing 30,000 damage. And then just continue to DPS him and he will die. If it does ever do the slime on the ground a second time, just do the exactly same thing. It's rinse and repeat. That is the only mechanic that this one has. Kinda a DPS dummy with one mechanic, very similar to Gold Wars Dungeon 2. When it comes to magic, this is my setup for that. Again, it's very generic. I have a Staff of Light, Subjugation, Blood Amulet of Fury again. A Gothic Staff is really nice here to lower the affinity of the boss to make it less tanky by using its spec. And all the other generic PVM stuff that you would take to bosses. And again, the Slayer Task here is amazing for the accuracy. You want to take Fire and Air runes in order to do Fire Wave as he's weak to fire spells. This will increase your accuracy heavily and is very important. Not only do I take these, I take Nature runes for the Entangle spell. It is really good. If you entangle the boss and stand away from his melee distance, he will not hit you. He will only do his ice attack if he hits you 4 times. This means you can make him never ever do his ice attack and always entangle him and kill him from afar. So with that being said, let's get into the boss and actually showcase it. This is the boss in the middle of the arena. You want to start off with an entangle queued and then chuck down a sunshine as long as your entangle does not splash. You want to make sure that you hit your entangle before putting down a sunshine, otherwise you may have to kite him and make sure that he's in position. You don't want him meleeing you. While you're inside your Sunshine, you want to try and do as much of a DPS rotation as you can. Use your Adren Pot, use your G Staff to lower his defenses, and just do as much damage as you can. Your Entangle will last 24 seconds. When these 24 seconds are up, he'll start running towards you. He'll be immune from another Entangle for a couple of seconds, and then you can Entangle him again. What I normally do is I run to the west towards the entrance again, and wait a couple of seconds and try and Entangle him again. If I do splash, I run up to the northwest side. You can aggro other dinosaurs, so the best way to do it is go northwest because you cannot aggro the green one while you're here. And you want to try and entangle them while kiting it up and down this side or while in the middle. I try and stay clear of the south side because that is the most scary one and you definitely don't want to aggro that. And as long as you entangle him and don't let him hit you 4 times, you'll never ever get the ice phase. But if you don't get to entangle him enough and he does hit you 4 times, I'm just going to explain what you do if you do encounter ice. The boss gives you Frostbite. It is a debuff that lasts 30 seconds. Your cooldowns between your skills, between the abilities that you can cast, are extended heavily. After a few more auto attacks inside the Frostbite, there'll be 3 patches of ground that are like smoldering. You want to protect from melee and stand on one of those. You can also use Devotion to make it hit ones with the melee hits as well, and then it will explode, and it will take away your Frostbite. It will also give you a ton of Adren when this happens, and you can DPS the dinosaur down really, really easily. I would also just like to apologize. I know these dinosaurs are females, but I'm so used to saying he or him for bosses. Please don't get triggered. My bad. But that is the whole boss fight in a nutshell. You want to entangle it as much as possible to make sure you're not taking melee hits. If you do accidentally get Frostbite, what you want to do is wait for a couple more melee hits and then stand on top of one of those like smoldering earth patches on the ground with Protect from melee and Devotion if necessary, so you can clear that Frostbite. And that is essentially all there is to this boss. This one's pretty easy. Again, it only really has one mechanic. And lastly, probably the most difficult one is the one that's weak to range. One big thing I will say right now is it's weak to bows. So if you're using crossbows, your accuracy is going to be a lot less than if you're using a bow. If you're not using the correct weakness with low tier gear, you get very heavily penalized here. And again, I would recommend a task with a Slayer Helm for increased accuracy. I personally used the Zarite bow and it's really, really good here. Tier 80 does the job absolutely fine. Unless you have something like Ascensions or whatever, then sure, use them instead. Even though they are crossbows, they're tier 90, so I would use those. Plus then you get back bolts, which are lovely. But try and use a bow if you're working on a low tier, and I would recommend the Zarite. Again, it's literally the same setup. God Wars Dungeon 1 armor. You don't even have to buy Armadyl gloves. The spiky Royal Vambraces are the same as Armadyl gloves pretty much, so use those. They're a lot cheaper. And then the only additional thing I take, other than, you know, the generic food and everything, is a dark bow. The dark bow is a shield bow, so I use that for resonance, as resonance is really good here. And that's it. Let's get into it. This one is the one to the south of the arena, and probably the one with the most harsh mechanics, and the one that could probably kill you the easiest. What I typically do is put down a Death Swiftness and DPS it as much as I can to start, and then after a couple of attacks, you will see the ground shake. And there'll be lines going towards him that you do not want to stand near. You want to be at least 2 squares away from those lines. So if you're on one side of your Death Swiftness, you can normally move over to your other side and still be in the Death Swiftness and not get hit by the lightning that follows those lines and goes in towards him. While that lightning is going in towards him, he'll do one mage attack, and then the second attack he does during this time, while the lightning is getting very close to him, is a range attack. This is the attack that you want to resonance, or if you don't have resonance up, make sure you're protecting range for this one attack. Then going back to protect from magic the rest of the time. You can't protect from magic here all of the time, except for that one range hit if you're not resonancing it. Then his second ability is giving you an extra adrenaline bar above your head, and when it completely depletes, you need to make sure you're moving. Move just before it's completely depleted, and you'll take 300 damage and get overcharged, which is a little bit of a buff to your damage and your cooldowns. If you move too soon, you won't get hit that 300 to overcharge you. Just make sure you're not standing still with this beam coming down, because it will really, really hurt, and it gets more and more damaging the longer it's been on the ground. And then he'll rinse and repeat his mechanics over and over again. He'll then make the lightning come into him, Remember, the first attack is magic, the second one is range, so you either want to switch to protect from range or resonance it, and then just continue to DPS him as best as you can while monitoring these two mechanics. That is this whole fight, but the mechanics can be very, very punishing if you do not avoid them. The lightning going into the boss hits you for 6Ks, and the lightning coming down from the sky can also end up ticking for like 3K plus each hit. So it's very easy to get KO'd at this boss if you're not paying attention. It ended up taking me just over 100 kills to get my first drop, which was the Berserker Ring add-on, which I sold for 10.5 million GP. Although I did kill a decent amount of these, and some of the drops were quite valuable, especially the Alks and the raw coins. So I'm going to showcase my rune metrics and showcase how much GP I made. I was killing them for about 4 hours in total, and that included the budget setups. As you can see, in these 4 hours, including the time that I was doing the budget setups, I got 46 kills at Rathis, 45 kills at Thantraken, and 40 kills at Orichalca. That added up to be 131 kills. Over here, you can see that the total value in GP for these kills was 24.6 million. But it valued the heart of the Berserker at 1.4 mil. So I actually made 23.2 mil in raw drops, plus the 10 mil drop, means that that's 33 mil. 33 mil for 4 hours really isn't too bad. It's nothing to write home about, but it isn't that bad for a mid-tier boss. And that included learning the bosses and doing it with some suboptimal setups like my tier 75 Staff of Light, etc. Overall, not too bad in terms of GP from this boss. I'm pretty happy they marketed it at mid-tier, and it pretty much is. It's pretty fun. I would definitely advise being on a task though, because the accuracy is very harsh. Hopefully you did enjoy this video. Do give it a like if you did enjoy. Sorry again about my voice. I can't do much about it, and I really wanted to get this video out, and I know it sounds stupid. I apologize again. Subscribe if you're new for loads of future content all related to RuneScape 3, and as always, until next time, see ya.